Today I'm going to talk about the Aztec Empire compared to the Hellenistic Kingdom. I'm going to give background on both those topics first, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more specifically about a comparable topic for those two. So looking at the Hellenistic Kingdom, we're going to look into the Greeks specifically. So what is there to know about the Greeks? And this is all coming from the August 30th lecture, slide 20. So they were sensitive about political independence for their communities, and there was hundreds of independent city-states that were the sizes of small cities that held around 10,000 people. They practiced chattel slavery, and they preferred to use non-Greeks as slaves. So they had city-states that were widely political, and they were mostly oligarchies, which were small groups of elite dominant political life. And again, that comes from the August 30th PowerPoint, slide 20. So then looking at the Aztec Empire, the Aztecs equaled something called Mexica, and the Mexica migrated into central Mexico during the 13th century from Aztlan, and that was a mythical northern land that they believe they originated from. And this comes from the November 15th PowerPoint, slide 7. So the Aztec capital was founded in 1325, and then from 1325 to 1428, it was a standard Mesoamerica city-state, and they were subject to pre-established political and cultural trends. And then from 1428 to 1519, the Aztecs transitioned into imperial power. And then that information comes from November 15th, PowerPoint, slide 31. So then looking into a specific topic for those two, I'm going to be talking about war. I'm going to be talking about the Greek light armed warfare from Philopoemen's Special Forces versus the Aztec War from the Daily Life of Aztecs. And those are the two readings I'm using. So Greek light armed warfare was important use of special forces in ancient Greek history. And the first example of this was a deliberate combination of amphibious landings, light armed troops, night attacks, guerrilla warfare, and non-mercenary special forces. This is Philopoemen's Special Forces, page 257 to 258. And then the light armed forces in classical Greece were not ever as important in battle as some of the other types of warfare that they used. And this is Philopoemen's Special Forces, page 262. They were useful in things like mountain passes because they were able to shoot down enemies because they had these special tactics, which were the night attacks, the special forces, the things like that, and they were able to use those in these mountainous passes. So that's Philopoemen's Special Forces, page 264. But after Alexander the Great, the light armed forces were rarely mentioned and did not play important roles in the Battle of the Hellenistic States. This is Philopoemen's Special Forces, page 265. So then Aztec War was important with the Aztecs in the structure of their society. And this is from the Daily Life of Aztecs, page 203. So it possessed religious and mythical connotations, which we don't see in that light-armed warfare, so that's one way to compare them. This one is a little bit more religious and mythical compared to the light-armed warfare. And that was page 203, Daily Life of Aztecs. It was also an imperialistic city's means of conquest, and it acquired legal basis. So it did have some similarities to light-armed forces, light-armed warfare, because it was a way of conquest and a way of fighting, just like the light-armed forces. And for the Aztecs, however, they only usually did the fighting after long and painful negotiations. And for the light-armed warfare, there wasn't really any talking about waiting for negotiations. That was just something that the the Hellenistic kingdom did. They did a lot of fighting and a lot of different types of warfare with the special forces and all those specific different types of fighting styles. And then for the fighting being only after long, painful negotiations for the Aztecs, that's page 206 of the Daily Life of Aztecs. And then something that I found to be more comparable for the two, the Greek light armed warfare and the Aztec war overall, was the Aztec war used something called ruses of war, which, for example, the troops would pretend to flee to draw out enemies, among other types of ruses as well, but that one stood out to me the most because it felt like a special tactic, a special force, just like the Greeks used with the different things that they did, the night attacks and the guerrilla warfare, for example, are comparable to the ruses that the Aztecs used. And that was page 209, Daily Life of Aztecs. So overall, in my opinions about this, I feel like the two types of war are comparable, and mainly because of the way that they fought was sort of similar in my opinion, just because they used special types of attacks. For the Greeks, they used the amphibious landings, the light armed troops, the night attacks, the guerrilla warfare, and the non-mercenary special forces, which was from the special forces, page 257 to 258. And then the Aztecs used the ruses of war, where they would pretend to flee and then they would draw out enemies, 209 Daily Life of Aztecs. And that is a comparable aspect of the two empires, or empire and kingdom, I should say. And overall, I feel like they do compare well.